viewers, welcome to the Black Agenda Podcast. I'm your co-host, Adrian Guest, along with co-host Devin Dito. And today we're going to be bringing you one of our weekly roundups and our live editions. And we're going to get right into it because, man, there's always a lot of breaking news. Devin, I don't know if it's because we're getting closer and closer to November or what's going on, but I feel like every week I'm like, how are we going to pick out our stories because there's so much going on? But viewers, the first one we wanted to start off with, because everybody's living in it right now, and that's the pandemic. You know, we've been getting a lot of mixed messages when it comes to the vaccination with coronavirus. Right now, when you look at the state of the coronavirus, we've got 6.7 million plus cases in the United States. We've got about 198,000 deaths. It's pretty bad. I mean, as a developed nation, we are really ramping up those numbers for some reason because we did not really do as other countries did and kind of have more of a lockdown. It looks like the U.S. averaged just under 695,000 tests per day, with an average of about 37,000 new cases per day over the past week. Hospitalizations continue to peak in late July. U.S. has about 30,000 people hospitalized with coronavirus. So we're still, for some reason, I think that we maybe have started to ignore the coronavirus because we're getting closer and closer to the election, Devin. But I mean, from these results and these numbers, I mean, we can't ignore what's going on because we can't stabilize our country, stabilize our economy until we kind of tackle this coronavirus and get these numbers down.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we would like to imagine that coronavirus is over, it's not. So we still have a very long way to go. Mask wearing and social distancing is still, what everybody needs to do to make sure that we keep this under control. And I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how, this is going to play out because states are, continuing to reopen. Texas is now allowing most establishments to open up to 75% capacity. But it is keeping bars open. But what you're seeing, though, is that now bars are starting to apply to open back up as restaurants. And so that's going to, of course, bring more people in and increase the possibility of exposure. And because in tight places, particularly bars and restaurants, that's where a lot of experts say where a lot of the spread was coming from. The transfer of the virus was coming from these tight spaces, with not great ventilation and things like that. And so, we see the NFL is back. We see college football is coming back. And this weekend, there will be more teams with, some fans in the stadium. Not a lot, but some. Even the Cowboys here in Dallas, they plan to have some fans at the stadium. So I think it's, yes, it seems to be receding, no doubt. Like you say, our hospitalizations peaked in July, and we're down now to about 30. Well, we're almost close to 60,000 hospitalizations. So that's good news, definitely. But like you say, there's a ton of news, but there's also a lot of mixed messaging going on as far as when we're going to get a coronavirus vaccine. And so interesting this week, we had it was really weird. And this is really frustrating to me because I don't even know what to believe. But on Wednesday, we had the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Robert Redfield. I think he was talking to a Senate subcommittee on Capitol Hill. And he stated that a coronavirus vaccine would not be widely available until, say, quarter 2, quarter 3 of 2021. So essentially summer of 2021. And he said, there would be a vaccine initially available could be available between November and December, but it would be very, very limited supply, and it would definitely have to be prioritized. And so, of course, once President Trump got wind of Redfield saying we weren't going to get a vaccine till next year, he just basically just said Redfield was confused and didn't know what he was talking about or had incorrect information. So, Adrian, we have talked about misinformation surrounding the coronavirus. We talked about it in July when we talked to Dr. Blanchard and Dr. Rodney Washington. And so here we are now at the doorstep of possibly having a vaccine coming. And here we are again, trying to figure out exactly what's true and what's not and what to believe and what's not. So we got President Trump telling us it's going to get here before Election Day. But then you have the head of the CDC saying, well, it's not going to be widely available until, summer of 2021. And it's just like, well, what do you believe?
Yeah, I don't know, Devin. I think that whenever you have this level of misinformation, what's the end result is public mistrust. I think we talked about that with both Dr. Blanchard and Dr. Washington, where most African Americans already have a little bit of animosity with the government because of different theories. But whenever you have the president saying one thing, you have the CDC saying one thing, you have the World Health Organization saying something, the FDA commissioners in a fight, and a few. It's just too much going on to where people are beginning to be hesitant on whether or not the vaccine is going to be trustworthy and whether the vaccine is going to be something that they're going to even do. Because if you have a vaccine that comes out, even if you do have one that comes out in November, but people don't trust it enough to take it, then there's no good to that. So I think that optimistically we're looking at mid 2021 because that's what looking at Dr. Fauci, Dr. Redfield, the W Health Organization, everybody's really pointing to 2021. I know that Trump is trying to really get this thing out to get his poll numbers up, but realistically these are really pushing towards 2021, and that's going to be as far as getting it out, distributing, because I mean just having the vaccine, yeah, there are 3 companies that are in stage 3, but that doesn't mean that you can just mass produce it. You can get it out because I've with this vaccine that I mean you've got to have it below a certain temperature that most vaccines don't have to go through. So I mean it's not it's not just having the vaccine and just getting it out as quickly as Donald Trump thinks it is. We've got Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, which those are in the stage 3 trials of it. Currently, AstraZeneca is on hold, and I think that they were in the media this week. Didn't really disclose why the hold was kind of going on or the illness that one of their patients had, which again, with vaccines, you kind of want some transparency because if you have you have people who are never vaxxers anyways, and then you throw in this whole pandemic situation and all this misinformation, and then you throw in a vaccine on hold, and you don't tell us why. That kind of just makes things a little bit I don't know, a little bit leery. And then the other two looks like could have data for clinical trials early as October, which fits into what Trump is talking about, but that's just clinical trials. And again, we're not pushing towards a little bit closer to 2021. So again, Devin, it's all about transparency. It's all about laying out the facts so that people understand. Sure that our institutions like the FDA, like the CDC, making sure that their messaging isn't swayed for political bonuses or brownie points, but making sure that the American people know what's going on, which, as we know from the Woodward tapes, Donald Trump has an issue with.
Exactly. I think people, they obviously don't trust the word of Donald Trump when it comes to the vaccine or anything really related to coronavirus because we've seen him say things that have proven just not to be true. So, but I think in this case, when it comes to the vaccine, we have to keep a couple things in mind. The first one is a vaccine is not necessarily 100% effective. It could be 50, it could be 70%. And there are multiple vaccines being, created and that are going to be distributed, hopefully. But what the government is doing to help speed up the process of getting a vaccine out is that they're actually pre-producing doses of this vaccine, even though, this particular vaccine may not work. It's so that when, say we do get to late October, November, and, one of these 3 companies, Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, says, hey, our vaccine works, it's been approved by the FDA, we can start releasing it. They'll have a stockpile of doses ready to go. But I think, we have to also keep in mind, yes, we'll get a vaccine, but it's also possible we will still have to wear a mask even after the vaccine is available because not everybody's going to have it immediately. So it's almost like, President Trump and Redfield are both correct in that a vaccine will be available, possibly by November. But when you say widely available and available for every American, that's probably going to be sometime halfway through next year. President Trump just basically went out and said, we're going to have a vaccine available for every American by April of 2021, which is a very hard deadline, to reach. I mean, I get, you're trying to be optimistic, but don't just go out there just willy-nilly saying things. And also to keep in mind that there is a lot of distrust when it comes to taking a vaccine, and that's to me is going to be the bigger hurdle. Is we can have a
Hmm.
vaccine all we want, but if people don't want to take it and they don't trust it, then it's really almost
Exactly.
useless. Back in earlier this week or last week, Pew Research Center did another survey, and it actually the people they polled, 51% of them said that if the vaccine was available today, they would get it, or they would definitely or probably get it. But 49% said they definitely or probably would not get vaccinated, even if it was available today. So that just shows you how you can't blame Trump totally, but his cheerleading and saying it's going to be ready by the election day has got people worried that this whole process may be rushed and that they don't want to be in line to
Hmm.
get a vaccine that may not necessarily work. And Dr. Washington spoke to this. There are a lot of people, particularly African Americans, who have had past issues with the government and health studies and vaccines like that, who make people weary, and especially weary when you have someone like the president just put what seems to be putting his thumb on the scale, trying to rush a vaccine out. And people are worried it may not be safe, and that's going to be a bigger hurdle, is convincing most of America that this vaccine is actually safe.
I completely agree, Devin, and it's sad because this is a public health crisis. It's not a campaign promise. It's not a blue issue, a red issue. I mean, you've got Trump who said that if you take out all the blue states, we're doing pretty good on the pandemic. And it's just it's just appalling for someone to be like that. And I mean, we had we had somebody kind of respond on our page, kind of talking about how this is kind of looking at an infringement on our rights, which is going to take us into our second segment. It's going to be about, and one of the things that I just wish people would realize is that this pandemic is real. I mean, it's not a hoax. I mean, it's we just went over the numbers. I mean, 6.7 million infected, about 200,000 deaths. I mean, worldwide, the numbers are up there even more. I mean, this is real. And until we have better information, trust from our institutions, wear your mask. I mean, people. It's not hard. It's really easy. And until we get to that point, we're not going to get this number. This 51% who say that they would do it, and 49% that say they won't. I mean, I think like you said, the intent to even take the vaccine has fallen by 21 points. I mean, it's just that with all of this, there's just a lot of chaos and confusion. So I'm glad that we're talking about this, Devin. I mean, I know that sometimes people may say we're going over the coronavirus and the pandemic too much, but honestly, with the way news likes to spin it, whether you listen to MSNBC or Fox or CNN, we need to be bringing this to you viewers and talking about this because, again, as we get closer and closer to November, I think that there's going to be a lot of things to dodge and deflect our attention away from the millions that are being infected and thousands that are being killed. But we can't lose sight of that because we're one country, one people. When we lose one life, that's a tragedy for everybody because who knows what that life would have done for us. So, as we go into our break, let us remember that. And then, like I said, we're going to come back and talk a little bit about how some people feel that this quarantine has kind of been an attack on our civil liberty. So, yeah, I know, Devin, that's crazy. So, viewers, sit back and we'll be right with you.
All right, welcome back. So, like Adrian said, we're going to kind of get into, some interesting, really crazy comments. Well, at least I think are crazy comments that came from Bill Barr. So, earlier this week, Bill Barr was doing an interview, not entirely sure where, but he was doing it, asked a question. And during his answer to that question, Bill Barr actually compared the coronavirus lockdowns to slavery by saying putting a national lockdown and stay at home orders is like house arrest. Other than slavery, was a kind of different restraint, the greatest intrusion on civil liberties in American history. So, I don't, my reaction first off to that is I do not understand why people love comparing things to slavery. Like, slavery was one of the worst things to ever happen, not only on the planet, but in this country. I don't remember, like, we talked about it off air, but there was nobody being whipped to stay in their house. There was nobody being beat to stay at home. They were barely being arrested. I mean, here in Dallas, a lady opened up and when she wasn't supposed to, and they celebrated her. She was put in jail for like a day and then she was let out. I mean, to compare this to slavery is nonsense. Like, why do we always have to go back and try to make light of slavery as if, the things we're experiencing right now are even remotely comparable? I mean, you want to talk about the greatest intrusion on civil liberties, let's talk about the Patriot Act first and how we just gave up our right to privacy in terms and in the call for being safer at home. We gave up all privacy rights. Let's talk about that first before we start talking about lockdowns that really only came about to protect people from a pandemic. And so its purpose was to save lives. So, Adrian, I'm appalled, offended, name it. You can name it all. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense why. And again, why do people love trying to compare things to slavery? I will never understand.
When you think about it, the lockdown was never what Barr talks about. It was never a national lockdown. Let's just get that straight. I mean, it was, if we would have had maybe a national lockdown, maybe we wouldn't have had such a long infringement, as they say, upon civil liberties. But we didn't have that. And the other thing is that this quote unquote lockdown was basically put in place because of experts. I mean, facts, science. It wasn't that this was trying to take away someone's guns or someone's rights to go to the movies or taking away your ability to go enjoy a beer at a ball game. It was never about that. It was about saving lives. It was about stabilizing our economy. It was about getting our whole planet through a global pandemic. That's what it was about. Slavery, on the other hand, was a sin on America. Slavery was, it was terrible. I mean, slavery was basically something that ruined the trajectory of an entire group of people because, again, we've talked about systemic racism. We've talked about the fact that you can't make up for generational wealth like that, and slavery stripped all of our ancestors of that. So when you're trying to compare these lockdowns that are in place to save my grandmother, my mother, maybe even me, to something slavery which stripped everyone's dignity and humanity away, and you're supposed to be someone who's the highest standard of justice, in our American democracy, the champion and the promoter of justice for all, equal protection under the law, and you make such a statement like this, you're encouraging people to go into this never mask movement that we're kind of seeing. You're encouraging people to ignore, Dr. Fauci, ignore Dr. Redford, ignore the WHO. That's what these sort of statements are doing, because you're saying that Americans, these lockdowns are infringement upon your civil liberty. So it's okay if you want to go to your state legislature with rifles and protest. It's okay if you want to not wear a mask out in public. It's okay if you want to demand, that everyone, gather in these large crowds and meet at these public rallies. That's what you're saying. And you're saying it's okay for Americans to continue to die. And that's unacceptable.
Exactly, and that's why the comparison. I mean, I'm trying to understand what he's trying to say. The restraint, he was saying it was a different kind of restraint, but that's how it intruded on people's liberties. I mean, like, yes, there were lockdowns. Like you say, it was not a national lockdown. And even with the state and local
Yeah.
lockdowns, it wasn't as if you couldn't not go outside at all. Like you could go outside. The stores were open. Walmart and those places were still open. You just couldn't go out to, say, the movies and restaurants yet. But that stuff eventually did come back open. I mean, it's the comparison doesn't make sense, and a lot of people love making light of slavery. They're trying to compare it to things that don't compare to it. Slavery is a thing on its own, an institution that built the economy of the country in the beginning, and then, like you say, stripped away generations of wealth. And yes, we're gonna have massive amounts of small businesses closing because of these lockdowns, but the government is at the ready to pump billions of dollars to make sure that some of those businesses stay around.
No.
When slavery happened, there was no government standing there to make sure that African Americans made it afterwards. That's the big difference. So yes, again, stop comparing things to slavery. Bill Barr, he's done enough. Hopefully, after this election, he can be replaced with somebody who actually has some objectivity and isn't just a political pawn, essentially. But slavery is, like you say, one of America's first sin. I would say the first is probably what we did to the Native Americans, and essentially kicking them off their land and doing a genocide to wipe them out, to take over their own land. And then we have slavery. So and again, like you say, it plays into this idea that masks don't work and that the virus is a hoax. I mean, I don't know what more proof we need when we have nearly 200,000 people dead because of this virus. Like, what more proof do we need? Yes, you may not have died from it, but it's very likely that someone may know somebody who's died from it, or who got it, ended up in the hospital. Like, this thing is real, and that's why the masks work. They work. Social distancing, It works. This is not a hoax. You can't hoax away 200,000 people. There are people around the country who've lost family members to this virus. It is very much a real thing. And, even this week we saw a couple of stories, boy, I don't understand what 2020 is doing, but watching this video here, I wish we could play it, but you could probably find it on YouTube. But there was a story out of Utah where these folks were doing a protest against having to wear masks. And during this story, they interview, they always find the worst people, but they found this lady who literally said that wearing a mask is like George Floyd's, that having to wear a mask is similar to George Floyd's "I can't breathe." I think she tried to compare the fact that George Floyd said he couldn't breathe and people were upset about that, and them having to wear masks. So I guess she's saying she can't breathe, so she doesn't want to have to wear a mask. And I think, again, they love making light of things that happen to us. Black man gets a knee on his neck for 8.5 minutes, and you want to complain about having to wear a cloth mask for 5-10 minutes in the grocery store.
I mean, it's just like, also the
stupid.
Arizona senator,
totally stupid.
I can't remember. He also did something like he started a speech off with a mask on, saying I can't breathe, and then took it off. I mean, that's just, I don't know. That's just, and forgive me, viewers, but that's just idiotic of anyone to ever equate that. I mean, just like Jim Clyburn said of Bill Barr, most god awful thing he's heard. That can also go up in there, because I mean, when you talk about George Floyd, you talk about someone who had a public assassination in the hands of police. You talk about, even the videos are like, the police telling them to get in the car, and George saying, I can't move, your knees on my neck, obviously. How can I get up in the car? And you're trying to compare wearing a mask, which you can actually breathe through. You can, even if you're not around someone, you can pull it down, and then when you get around someone, pull it back up. That's ridiculous and ludicrous, and that's just, I don't know what kind of conscience that lady has. And I mean, again, listeners, I apologize if you are on her side or whatever, but I can't be on her side, and I can't understand anyone who could be on that side, because comparing those things compared to slavery is ridiculous. Even this other story we saw in Florida, where you had some folks in Target running around saying "take it off" to people about their mask. I'm just like, what kind of country do we live in
Good
where you
God.
don't care about life, where you don't care about the health of your fellow community members? Where are we living, people? Come on, we got to get back to some decency. We got to get back to a point to where we care about one another. It's not about you, it's not about your household, it's about your community. Because if we have a healthy community, we have a healthy household, you have a healthy individual, you have a better off family. So come on, we got to get past this. We're in a pandemic, people are dying, people are in the hospital, people are in ICU beds. This isn't going to change until we get real. So this never mask movement, let's get rid of that. That's a loser and a sucker. That's what Donald Trump should have been calling losers and suckers and talking about, rather than our troops and our veterans who've given their limbs and their lives for us. So that's all I got to say on that, Devin.
I think that's all that needs to be said. Um, to kind of switch gears a little bit, talking about civil liberties being, intruded upon. A story came out this week about an ICE whistleblower. So ICE is forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, but ICE is like a division or part of the Department of Homeland Security, and they are responsible for rounding up, what they call illegal aliens, so folks who are here illegally. And so this week, a whistleblower came public saying that detainees, illegal alien detainees, I'm assuming at the border, are getting treated poorly, and even some of them were having to get unnecessary medical procedures. And I think some of those procedures happen to be hysterectomies, which is, I mean, like, during this story, the lady even the whistleblower even said that there was a doctor a doctor there. I'm trying to find the name of it, but apparently there's a doctor there who's the only person doing these hysterectomies, and these are happening without these folks signing off or giving the okay. I mean, total. You talking about an intrusion on civil
Mm-hmm.
liberties? How about someone coming and saying we're going to give you a hysterectomy because you're in our country illegally, like, or trying to cross into the country illegally? That's essentially what's happening. Um, and so, top Democrats have already called for investigations. It was a Georgia nurse who filed a whistleblower complaint. Among other things, she also alleged a lack of medical care, unsafe work practices, and like I said, questionable hysterectomies. And legislatures are already calling on the Department of Homeland Security, Homeland Security's Inspector General, to step in and find out what is going on. And so, Adrian, this is disturbing to say the least. I mean, you're talking about folks who the only thing they have done wrong is maybe cross into the country illegally, and are maybe, women are having to have hysterectomies, without signing off. I mean, where is the outrage about
Yeah, I
that?
mean this
Where's the
guy.
outrage
I
on the
mean,
right
Nurse
about that
Rubin
instead
was
of talking
reporting
about
about the
lockdowns?
doctor. I mean, called him basically the uterus collector. Like everybody that sees him, he's taking out their uterus or he's taking out their tubes. I mean, it's crazy to me that this kind of stuff happens, but we
That's
don't say this is
awful.
attack on civil liberties because these people are illegal. So apparently they don't have any sort of civil liberties. I don't know. I mean, they're talking. I mean, even further into the allegations, talk about refusing to test detainees for coronavirus, shredding their medical records, even fabricating medical records, even allowing systematic employees of coronavirus to work while awaiting their test results. I mean, you've got the whistleblower who is Dawn Wooten. She's a nurse. She was demoted and reprimanded because she missed work while waiting for her coronavirus test results. So, I mean, she was doing the right thing to make, yeah, Devin, I mean, doing the right thing to make sure she didn't get people sick, but they, reprimanded her, demoted her down to like an as need nurse rather than a full time nurse because she was trying to make sure she didn't get people sick because they would rather you be in there symptomatic working, getting other people sick. I think she even said that she thought that it may have been because she was telling officers who what immigrants were testing positive. I just don't understand the again I don't know, just it's more idiots. Just again, Trump has basically filled the department with his leaders, and his leaders are basically trying to have some sort of agenda where his base don't like immigrants. His base, think that only we who live in America, born in America, should ever enjoy the rights of America. Even though we tout to be the greatest country on the planet, other people are going to want to be here. But he's basically made the department have an agenda here that's anti-immigrants. I mean, he can, Trump can do his nationalization ceremonies, but when you do things like this and you try to wash it on the radar, it doesn't speak well. I mean, you've got the medical director there, Dr. Ada Rivera, has already said that, kind of denied the allegations and said, we're going to fully cooperate with investigations. But I mean, I don't know. I guess you can't prejudge an investigation until you actually see the investigation. But I wouldn't be surprised because Donald Trump's, he's a commander of the ship and he's got a lot of corrupt people in high places. So the story isn't surprising to me. And you've got someone who's alleged some pretty sharp allegations. I don't know if you would just allege these things without ever seeing or having any proof of those. So again, we'll see where this story takes us, Devin. But I think instead of Barr saying, our lockdowns, which was to preserve health, are the infringement, he needs to be focusing right here.
Exactly, and that's why I asked, where is the outrage? We go around. The last thing we'll say, Trump announced he's going to create this commission, the 1776 commission, to basically educate or re-educate people through a patriotic education. And this was in direct response to things like the 1619 Project that exposed really the atrocities that happened during slavery and how slavery was a part of the American history, even though our textbooks and other things had essentially romanticized it and wrote out the worst parts of slavery. We oftentimes call ourselves the greatest country in the world. And I'm not saying we're not great, but we have problems. And yes, this is an allegation, but if this is true, I mean, the fact that we are okay with making and forcing detainees at the border or anywhere in the country to have improper procedures like a hysterectomy is outrageous for a country that bills itself as being the land of the free and the shining city on the hill, or the greatest country on earth. That's the type of things we do, and that's what happens when you dehumanize people. And that's what happens when you go and say that Mexico is sending us rapists and murderers because that's all we think that's coming over the border. And that is just simply not true. These are real people who are only looking for, a lot of them are just looking for a better opportunity. They're coming from somewhere where there isn't a lot of opportunity, and they're coming here. And to treat them the way that we are is ridiculous. By we do that, and then on the other hand, we want to tell the world, hey, we're the greatest country in the world. And then we go and you look in our house and look in our closets, and we're down here doing atrocities to people, locking them in cages and, forcing them to have hysterectomies. So it's hypocritical that, we'll try to compare slavery to
guys who don't
lockdowns when we're forcing people to have hysterectomies at the border.
That's taking out female's uterus. I mean, I think you had one detainee who said that, she was, hoping to have children and her husband was hoping to have children, but now they may not ever be to have children anymore. So that's what you have happening. People who it's basically genocide. We're basically saying that your offspring, you don't deserve to have offspring is basically what we're trying to say here. So this is an outrage. I mean, this is really an infringement on civil liberty. So sorry, Devin. I know we're about to go into break, but I know a lot of guys out there may not necessarily know what a hysterectomy is and what that does after for a female. So I just wanted to make sure to highlight that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so with that, we'll go into break, and when we come back, we're gonna get our last segment in, which is about the big news that happened last night, which is the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She passed away last night at age 87. So we'll cover her passing and go over her legacy and what she's leaving behind, and we'll also, of course, have to look at the political implications and what this means for 2020's election and the next nominee that Trump plans on nominating. So stick with us. We're almost done. We'll be taking one more break and we'll come back and go over. I can. Welcome back. So, all right, you ready? Like I mentioned before the break, we were going to get into, the big story last night. Really unfortunate story, which is that. All right, welcome back. So, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has passed away. She passed away last night. The big story last night. Really unfortunate story, which is that at the age of 87, Supreme Court Justice after a really long battle, Ruth Bader Ginsburg has passed away. She passed away last night. So, surrounded by Adrian, she was a titan on the Supreme Court Justice, and after a really long battle, appointed by Bill Clinton, and metastatic pancreatic cancer. 26, Adrian, she was a titan. She had a very long ruling on the Supreme Court Justice. It's really interesting to see her. She was appointed by Bill Clinton, and she served for, actually became more outspoken, 27 years, and more of a. So she had a very long ruling, and as you can, it's really interesting to see her time on the bench because she over time actually became more outspoken. She was really very more of a champion for women's rights and really a lot of liberal things that they were trying to lose to keep intact. Really unfortunate. We're going to miss very vocal voice, especially towards they called it criticizing notorious RBG. So she had definitely got coined. We hate to lose her, and it's really unfortunate. We're going to miss how much of a trailblazer on the bench. They called it notorious RBG. 2020, man. She had definitely got coined a name by the younger folks who also saw. So I don't know how we're going to make much of a trailblazer she really was. So it's really unfortunate one that's to lose such a great person. 2020, man, continues to take away incredible people from us. So I don't know how we're going to make it through the rest of the year, but this was definitely one that's going to hurt. Yep.
But it's just so crazy to have this because the Republicans, since Donald Trump's been in office, have done so much to flood judicial seats on federal courts. They've gotten two justices already on the Supreme Court now, and they're trying to throw another one on there when there's only 9 justices. So you'd have a third of the court appointed by Trump, which is one of the worst presidents we've ever had, and probably the worst president we'll ever have. I don't know how you can get worse than someone who literally said that I downplayed it. I wanted to downplay it. I continue to downplay it. He still downplays it today. But they're really trying to push this through here rather than let the American people do it. They didn't even give President Obama's nominee an opportunity to be Merrick Garland. They didn't even give him an opportunity to have a hearing or vote. I mean, they didn't even give him the common decency to say, well, you can come into my office privately and let's just talk on the side about it. I mean, this is just crazy. When you have someone like RBG who's done so much, and her wish was that, hey, don't do this. Like, don't do this until there's a new president. At the very least, Moscow Mitch, have a little bit of decency to respect her wish.
That is the unfortunate, flip side to her passing. As tragic as her passing is, watching this unfold on social media, particularly on Twitter, the moment you saw her passing, you saw tweets about Mitch McConnell and Republicans and what are they going to do? Are they going to honor the precedent that they set in 2016 by not allowing President Obama's pick to be voted on? But of course, like you say, they are solely focused on power and filling the court with as many conservative justices as they can. I think Trump has now had, this would be his third nomination. I think he had Neil Gorsuch, and then we had Brett Kavanaugh, which was a lot of controversy, but still got through. And he could potentially have 3, which would then set the court, I believe now, from say a 5-4, conservative liberal, now to 6-3. And some people say Justice Kennedy is not really that conservative anymore, but this would be unprecedented and could have humongous ramifications. But this is going to be interesting to see this play out because you don't really know politically how this is going to work, but you can see the ads from Democrats coming out saying Mitch McConnell in 2016, Mitch McConnell in 2020. They don't match up. Lindsey Graham in 2016 saying we're not gonna, put a nominee up there if a seat comes open during an election year. We're not gonna do that. Lindsey Graham said that. Now you have, we're gonna see what Lindsey Graham says here in 2020, but it's gonna be interesting to see how they get around the hypocrisy. Now I've read kind of that the thinking is that when the party in control of the Congress also controls the White House and an opening comes up, they will let the president do that. But since in 2016, the opposite party controlled Congress and the White House was controlled by Democrats, then they said it was, I guess, somehow precedent that the opposite party that controlled Congress did not allow the president to appoint a nominee. Now, I don't remember them mentioning that in 2016. I remember the whole purpose of it was just so they didn't believe we should be nominating someone. And that was in February of 2016. This is in September, halfway through September, and they are going to vote on a nominee. I mean, the hypocrisy is ridiculous here, but they don't care. Like I say, they are solely zero laser focused on filling the Supreme Court with conservative justices. And the response from the Democratic Party has been mixed. We haven't gotten much yet. Chuck Schumer's already said they don't think this should happen. But interestingly, Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts actually said that if the Republicans do vote on a nominee and confirm one, that the Democrats should actually go in and eliminate the filibuster and then move to expand the Supreme Court, actually. So there is talk, you may not know, but there is talk from some people around the country that we should expand the court from 9 to, say, 11. And if the Democrats, take back the Senate and the White House, they could be set up to potentially fill the bench with two more Supreme Court justices, which will more than likely be liberal. And then I think even Ed Markey also wanted them to expand the lower tier judges from, I think, 70 to 100, and filling in, of course, Joe Biden would get the possibility of doing that too. So this is going to really be nasty. I think we already knew the election was going to be, brutal. But I think now this is really going to take it over the top, because now you're talking about a Supreme Court justice slot being at stake. You have Republicans who want to stack it with conservatives. You have liberals who are worried that if that happens, things like Roe v. Wade could be on the chopping block. And so the ante just got upped. And so I'm a little bit worried of how this is going to play out and what the heck is this country going to look like on November 4th or 5th or 6th when we get the results, and if we have gone through a bruising nomination process. No doubt, this Devin. Is going to be a huge task for whoever the next president
one of the things that
to try to heal the country, bring folks back together.
One of the things that we all as Americans forget about is the judicial branch. We'll look at the legislature, we'll look at our legislative branch, we'll look at the executive branch, we'll pay attention to our Congress, our senators, we'll pay attention to the president. We forget the judges. We forget about all of that. And one of the things that surprisingly that is a good statistic. So Donald Trump, he's always trying to throw out, he's the best and the greatest. He's done the most than any other president. Even said he did more for Puerto Rico than any other president. But one thing that he actually can tout is that he's put more justices on federal positions than any other president. I think that was one of the things they were talking about when I was watching the news the other day. And like I said, Americans, we usually don't pay attention to that, but that's important, because you can have the president, or rather the executives, or it's your governor, your mayor do something, you can have your legislature do something, but that checks and balance system that we have, the judicial branch can step in and say, hey, legislative branch, hey, executive branch, what you're doing is wrong, is unconstitutional. They could block that. So it's really important what's going on, Americans. We've got to wake up and start. That's why I really wish we taught civics in school, because we've got to pay attention to stuff like that. Because, I mean, when you look at the list of 20 names that might be on Trump's nominees, some of those names don't have positions that we need to have. I mean, you've got some of the senators like Tim Cotton of Arkansas and Ted Cruz of Texas in there. I mean, again, I don't know everyone's politics, but I've heard these guys, and I don't know if we necessarily need them on the Supreme Court, because if you're going to be on the Supreme Court, yeah, you could be a little conservative, you could be a little liberal, but you need to abide by the law, and you need to kind of be able to adjudicate it adequately and equally for everybody. And the sorts of statements that these guys and some of the other people on Trump's list have made, that they don't add up. I mean, it's just plain and simple. They don't add up. So viewers, call your congressman, call your senators, write some letters, whatever you got to do. But we really have to start to pay attention to what's going on in our judicial branch on the federal level, and really pay attention to what's going on with the Supreme Court seat. Because, like I said, these positions, whether it's federal Supreme Court, I mean, these are lifelong positions. I mean, cases that work themselves up to the Supreme Court, these are huge cases. I was telling somebody, you think about Brown versus Board of Education, that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. What if there would have been some justices who said, well, actually, separate but equal is okay? So that would have been, I mean, think about that, viewers. That would have been, people like me and Devin in one school, people that look like not us would have been in another school. But because we had justices who realized that, we should all have equal protection of the law. Equal means equal, separate but equal doesn't mean that. So this is a very important moment for us. It's crazy. Yeah, as if we didn't think that whoever's going to be president was really big. Now we've got a justice seat that we've got to fill, Devin. So, man, 2020, gosh, it's quite a year for sure.
Quite a year, definitely for the history books. This is going to be one that we will all remember. And maybe this did just become the most important election of our lifetime. I know we've heard that all year, but I think it actually just did become the most important election. So that's going to do it for that topic. And we're going to, we'll be talking about, RBG and what's going to happen with that Supreme Court justice seat as we go throughout the week. And the more we know, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to keep up with the conversation. We'll try to keep you informed of what happens as we get into who Trump is going to nominate and what that nomination process is going to look like. So we're almost at the end of our show. We have quick hits, so some news that you missed from this week. You ready? Welcome back. So we're going to get into our quick hits. So we always end the show with quick hits, which is news
I can do the first
you
one.
may have missed this week. So this was a lot of news this week. So we try to cover the important things. So our very first one, of course, is going to be about
Welcome back.
So we're going to get into
TikTok.
our quick
So
hits. So we always end the show with quick
in
hits,
August,
which is news
President
you
Trump
may
said
have
that he was
missed
gonna ban
this
TikTok,
week. So this
along
was
with
a lot of
another
news this week,
popular
so we try to cover
social
the
media
important
app
things.
called
So our very
WeChat.
first one,
Both
of
of
course,
these
is going to
apps
be
are
about
owned by
the
Chinese
app
companies.
TikTok.
TikTok is
So
owned by a Chinese
we
company
know
called
back in
ByteDance,
August,
and
President Trump
WeChat
said
is
that he was
owned
going to
by
ban
a
TikTok,
Chinese tech company
along
called
with another
Tencent,
popular,
which in China these
social
apps
media
are
app
humongous.
called
But
WeChat. And
in
both of these
August, the
apps
Trump
are
administration
owned
said that
by
they were gonna ban
Chinese
TikTok
companies.
on
TikTok is
September
owned by
20th. If they did,
WeChat is
American
owned by
company. And the
a
reason that
Chinese
they
tech
claimed
company
for doing
called
this
Tencent.
was because
they
they
were
were
China,
concerned
these
that
apps are
these Chinese
humongous.
companies
But
were collecting
in
data
August,
from
the Trump
Americans
administration said
and
that they
would
were
turn
going
it
to
over
ban
to
TikTok on
Chinese
September
government.
20th
So
if they didn't
as
get
of
bought
today,
by
Saturday the
an
19th.
American
There is no
company.
buyer
The reason
for
that they
TikTok.
claimed for doing this,
I think
was
Microsoft recently
because they
bowed
were
out
concerned that
of
these
trying to
Chinese
buy the
companies
company.
were
There were
collecting
some
data
talks
on
of maybe
Americans
Oracle buying
and
it,
would
but
turn
as
it
of right
over
now,
to the Chinese
TikTok
government.
has not
So,
been bought by an American
as of
company,
today,
and
Saturday the
starting
19th,
tomorrow,
there is no
it will
buyer
be,
for TikTok.
become unavailable.
I think
in the
Microsoft
Android and
recently
Apple
bowed
app
out
stores. So if you don't
of
have
trying
it,
to
you
buy
better
the
get it
company.
now
There were some talks
before
of
it
maybe
is taken
Oracle
off the
buying
App
it, but
Store.
as of right now, TikTok has not been bought by an American
Yeah,
company.
get it while it's hot
And
before it's gone.
starting
Yeah.
tomorrow, it will be become unavailable in
So
the
on to
Android
another
and
story.
Apple
Hey,
app
people, we're
stores. So if you
finally
don't have it,
getting
you better get
our
it now
wish, even though
before it
sometimes
is
it may not
taken
be
off
good.
the App
But
Store.
Big Ten, Pac-12, MWC will be playing fall football after all.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, I did think that when there was one coach, I can't remember which team, it was just like I think all of our players have been tested and tested positive for it.
Yeah, that was
But,
LSU.
we're going to be playing football. LSU. So we're still playing football anyway. So it looks like as on Wednesday, the Big Ten voted to play football or having a robust testing regimen for players. So maybe that's a good
Yeah,
thing.
it was LSU.
The Big Ten Conference said fall football will begin October 23rd under a new set of health safety screening for athletes, coaches, and trainers. However, tickets will not be sold and fans will not be allowed to attend games. So at least there's a little bit of social distancing there. Under the Big Ten's plan, anyone participating in tested on site for COVID-19 and the test results must be completed before stepping onto the field. Any student athlete testing positive cannot return to the Big Ten athletics for at least 21 days. So they're even going longer than the 14-day quarantine. So at least they're doing some good safety precautions, making sure fans aren't there. So, hey, guys, watch football on TV and stay healthy.
Yeah. Right. It's always exciting to get football. Like you say, even though it may not be a good thing, we're happy to. Our next quick hit is going to come out of Kentucky in Louisville. So the Breonna Taylor's family has they announced this week that they have settled a lawsuit against the city of Louisville for her death. And so they settled with the city for $12 million. And the settlement, which was announced on Tuesday, includes things like police reform and changes to the approval process and execution of search warrants. And it also includes a housing credit program that is hoping to provide incentives for officers to live in certain low-income areas of the city. And they've also agreed to expand random drug testing for officers who are with the Louisville Metro Police. Now, it has been 143 days since her death, and the cops who killed her have not been charged yet. And so I think we talked about it last week, but the Kentucky grand jury is still hearing evidence being presented by the Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron. So 143 days, we're hoping that we get something. And so yes, $12 million is great, but we're not entirely, it doesn't fix what happened. And so we'll see if charges are actually brought and whether they're actually convicted. But her family did settle for $12 million. So our next story, our next quick hit. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties. Our next quick hit is going to be about the newly announced Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain announced a peace deal at the White House this week. And this is, something for President Trump to try to bolster his foreign policy credentials with ahead of the election. And so, like I say, it had Israel and two other Arab countries, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, came to the White House Southern Lawn to sign a peace deal. And so these two countries became only the third and fourth Arab states to fully open ties with Israel. And the reason why this is a big deal is because Israel has been mostly shunned by Middle Eastern countries in part because of its failure to fix or resolve the conflict that they have with the Palestinians. And so before this particular deal, Egypt and the country of Jordan had actually already reestablished ties with Israel. And so just a little caveat about this, though. This historic deal as it is, was orchestrated, and one of the incentives for these countries to come on
And
board was
just
that
to
there
give
was
us
a
a little
U.S.
bit of
arms sale
entertainment
deal that they were trying
mainstream
to
news,
negotiate
looks
as
like we got
well.
a
So
divorce
Potter being on
between Cardi
there
B and rapper
was that they were going
Offset.
to be able to do
Looks like
this
she
deal,
filed for
especially with the
divorce
United
on
Arab
Tuesday,
Emirates.
September 15th, after being married for about 3 years, according to the Fulton County Magistrate in Georgia. The court documents obtained by Billiard indicate that Cardi is asking the court to award her primarily legal and physical custody of their child. Their hearing is scheduled to begin on November 4th at 10 a.m. So, hey, that's cool. So, elections on the 3rd. You can wake up, with all this chaos that's probably going to happen. You can watch, maybe you can tune into the hearing or something. Looks like the WAP rapper hopped on Instagram Live on Friday to thank. Oh, my bad. I didn't see. I don't listen to this kind of stuff. I mean, I listen to rap and stuff, but man, yeah, I know it's just cool. It's like a little bit of blunder for our live viewers there. But anyways, on Instagram Live, looks like Friday to thank her fans for all the love and prayers. See, Devin, how
That's funny.
looks like, let's see here. Cardi also clarified that she did not file for divorce as a publicity stunt for her upcoming album. Looks like she said nothing crazy out of this world happened. Sometimes people really do grow apart. I've been with this man for 4 years.
Okay.
I've been, looks like I have a kid with this man. I have a household with this man. Sometimes you just get tired of the arguments and they build up. You get tired sometimes before something happens, you leave. So, hey, she's speaking some real truth to relationships. I think this quarantine, a lot of people have said it put a lot of strain on relationships too. So, hey, a little bit of news for you. Cardi B having a divorce.
Definitely. Right, and since some other, retail news mostly. I'm not a hardcore gamer, but I do have a game console. So I was excited to see that now we have the pricing for both the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X consoles. So both the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X will cost $499 and digital sibling, which means you don't need a disc or anything. So the PlayStation 5 digital will cost $399 and the Xbox Series S digital will cost $299. And so the Xbox Series X is going to be coming out on November 10th, while the PlayStation 5 will be released on November 12th. And if you are thinking about pre-ordering it, you may be a little bit behind for the pre-orders for the PlayStation 5. There was a little bit of a chaos, actually. They announced the pricing for the PlayStation 5, and apparently you could start pre-ordering that night. A lot of people tried to pre-order naturally, and they ran into some problems on sites like Best Buy and Walmart. So we're hopefully, if you continue trying, you should be able to get through and pre-order. But if you're thinking about getting your Xbox Series X, you can start pre-ordering that on September 22nd.
We'll have something to get us to
that is still upcoming for those who are looking forward to getting a new console
last quick hits,
just in time
just
for the
to
holiday
get into a little
shopping
bit of
season.
news about Hurricane Sally. Hurricane Sally made landfall on the Alabama and Florida coastline on Wednesday. Looks like Sally was about 100 plus mile an hour winds, dumping more than 30 inches of rain in parts of Alabama and Florida. Estimated destroying nearly 400,000 homes and businesses, and at least has killed one person. The Florida governor has warned people in flooded areas that water from the hurricane will subside. Heavy rains to the north are expected to cause flooding in the panhandle. So shout out to those families, prayers, vibes, whatever you believe in and feel, send it to those families. These hurricanes, the fires, a lot going on, displacing a lot of people. So definitely thinking about the victims of Hurricane Sally. So with that, that's our last quick hit, Devin. I mean, this has been another great live episode, another great addition to our weekly roundup. I'm always amazed by your ability to put these together. Viewers, just so you know, Devin does a lot to put all of our stuff together. And I'm saying that just because tomorrow's his birthday, so I want to give a little special shout out about that. Putting all this stuff together before his birthday. Usually people do a whole birthday week or whatever, but This guy's working hard, so definitely wanted to definitely wanted to make sure to highlight that. So hey, go on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Make sure you shout out Devin, so you say happy birthday to him. Follow us at Black Agenda Pod, so we can make sure to keep bringing you
just
the
today.
news. Devin, you got anything else?
Yeah, so appreciate all the kudos there. Yes, my birthday is tomorrow, and I will be at home. Social distancing and everything. But I did get a new air fryer, so I'm super excited about that. To see what that's like. But the only last, again, make sure you follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. It's up there in the upper right hand corner. Make sure you follow us and subscribe, because we will have some pretty good episodes coming out. We just had a great episode with Aaron Johnson from Fulton County Board of Registrations and Elections. And then we're going to have an upcoming episode with author Mary Frances Winters about her new book called Black Fatigue. And then we'll also have a new episode coming about the Second Amendment. And we're going to kind of talk about the relationship between, African Americans and the Second Amendment, but the, gun legislation and gun laws and gun control as a whole. We really want to get into that conversation and kind of get into some of the misconceptions about gun owners as a whole. Make sure you subscribe. And again, thank you for watching us. We really enjoy doing this and bringing you guys the news. So we'll be back next week, September 26th at 4 o'clock, not 2. We'll be at 4 p.m. Central.